Good evening, everybody. My name is Rob Shaw. I'm the chair of the City of Nashua Zoning Board of Adjustment, and this is the January 14th, 2025 meeting. Basically, I'll go through some introductory remarks and comments, try to describe a little bit about how the meeting works, and then we'll get right into the heart of the business for us tonight. Basically, we will be hearing multiple different kinds of cases tonight. We will hear variances and special exceptions, and also a much less common one, we also do have an equitable waiver hearing as well for tonight that we will go through. Basically, the way...
Rob, I think people are having trouble hearing us.
I can try getting closer, but I feel like I'm not any... Is that any better for folks? Do you happen to know anything we could do for the audio in the room?
We're not clear to everyone in the audience. Interesting. We'll go check next door.
Yeah.
We'll try to project.
Yeah. I'll go ahead and try to do some of that projection, as well as giving Mr. Durfee a chance to see if he can help us out with anything from our technical staff. Basically, again, we as a zoning board, I didn't say this already, we are a quasi-judicial body. Our purpose is to weigh in on those types of cases I mentioned. Basically, they are things where the zoning code either specifically prohibits them by the way the code is written, or there are certain requirements that certain criteria have to be met to be allowed. Otherwise, if those criteria are not met, then the board cannot be affirmative to those. Each of these items that I've mentioned, as far as variances, special exceptions, and the equitable waiver, they all have 5 so-called points of law associated with them. And I'll just kind of mention the basic categories for each of those. For variances, the first one is that it would be, that granting the variance would be, or would not be contrary to the public interest, that the spirit of the ordinance would be still being observed, that substantial justice would be done, that there is no significant diminution of surrounding property values, and that unnecessary hardship has been met. For special exceptions, again, that's a criteria where, as the title might indicate, is allowed if criteria are met. So it has to be listed in the table of uses, it has to not create undue traffic or pedestrian or impair pedestrian safety. It also can't impact general public systems like water and sewer. That any special regulations associated with that are fulfilled, and that it will not create something that is out of character with the neighborhood. The equitable waiver request basically has to meet, again, 5 criteria, and I think I'll save those specifically for when we get to that case, since it's very specific and not very common. We also, besides the, I believe, 7 regular cases that we have before us tonight, we also have 2 rehearing requests. Those will be at the end of the agenda. I'll go ahead and do also a little bit of the housekeeping as far as taking attendance and introductions. I've already stated my name, and Rob Shaw, I'm the chair of the zoning board. Mr. Steve Lionel is the vice chair. Mr. J.B. Boucher is our clerk. Mr. Minkara is one of our full-time members, and Mr. Patry is one of our alternate members. Right now, we have 5 members in attendance. and we need 3 for a quorum. We can have up to 5 members voting on cases. So we might have another member join us later, and we will handle that if that happens. But right now, all 5 of us will participate and vote on all the cases. If we are joined by our other member, we all will still participate in all the hearing and all the discussion, but only 5 members will vote, and I'll make sure that's noted as to who is voting. We also have Mr. Sam Durfee, and Sam, your title is you're the planning manager of the city, right?
Correct.
Okay. So that is our, and then as far as attendance, I'll just do like the roll call part of things. Mr. Steve Lionel.
Present.
Mr. J.B. Boucher.
Present.
Mr. Jay Mankara.
Present.
Mr. Patry.
Present.
And Mr. Shaw is present. So we do have the quorum for the board. The minutes for tonight will be generated. There will also be audio and video recordings that'll be available later. They are through the city website. And we do need and require that all testimony be given through microphones. That's why we have them in front of us. But also anybody that's giving testimony in the audience, you need to come up to the podium, and anytime you're coming up to speak, you need to state your name and address for the record. Also, the acoustics, in some ways, despite the problems we're having, are very good in this auditorium, at least as far as if there's conversations out in the audience, that sound carries up here very distinctly. So if you do need to have a conversation, actually we ask that you just step out into the hallway and have that. Also, if you can remember to silence your cell phones, that will be helpful as well. As far as the mechanism of the cases, I will read the case into the record. We'll ask the applicant to come forward again to the podium, state your name, address. You'll have up to 15 minutes to present your case. The board might have questions for you, and we'll follow up in that regard if there are some. After your testimony, then anybody that wants to speak in favor of a case has up to 5 minutes to come up and testify in regards to their support. And then we'll seek if there's anybody that has questions, concerns, or opposition. You'll have a turn to come up for up to 5 minutes as well to speak. And then if there was any of that oppositional testimony, the applicant can come back up for rebuttal, up to 5 minutes, and then one and only one of any of those parties that had questions, concerns, or opposition will be able to come up for the final 5 minutes. If we do have that situation, we can go through it, but we usually end up just asking those of you that would be involved to kind of decide who would be the person that should take on that role. It might not even happen tonight. It just depends on the nature of the cases and the testimony. So once we hear all that testimony, we will close that public hearing. We'll open the public meeting, which is when we deliberate as a board, and we will come to some kind of decision on the case, usually voting it up or down. We sometimes do table cases and things like that, but generally we will ultimately take some action on a case that is on our agenda. So that is, I think, the key basics. Does anybody have anything to note that I didn't cover? Mr. Durfee, there are no changes to the agenda, is that correct?
Correct. No changes to the agenda. We did receive some written testimony past the deadline. This is from an abutter to the 19 Alice Drive case. It is testimony in opposition.
Okay. All right. So I will go ahead and start us off with case number 1. The applicant is Gage Armand. The owner is Misri LLC. The address is 106 West Hollis Street, sheet 86, lot 33. The request is for a variance from Land Use Code Section 190-15, Table 15-1, item number 35, to convert a convenience store into a barber shop. This is in the RC zone, Ward 4. Welcome, and as noted, if you give your name and address for the record and tell us what you're doing and why.
Hi, how you doing? My name is...
You can raise the whole arm of that up to help. Or, yeah, it is also, yeah, you can just handhold if that's okay.
Alrighty, my name is Gage Armand. I live at 17 Lovewell Street, Nashua, New Hampshire, and I'm looking at converting the building on 106 West Hollis Street to a barber shop. Should we get straight into it?
Yeah, you can just go ahead and tell us, basically kind of the reasons and how you believe you're meeting the criteria.
Okay. The building at 106 West Hollis Street has a long history of commercial use, including a convenience store. A barber shop is natural low impact use for the space. A barber shop previously operated at 110 West Hollis Street, right next door, showing the compatibility with this type of business in the neighborhood. My shop will be appointment only and has adamant parking. I'm also partnering with the Boys and Girls Club to offer a free mentorship program for underprivileged kids in the area. Denying the variance could potentially leave me, the owner of the building, without income and the property vacant. Looking forward to bringing the building up to standard and taking good care of it. I think that's about it.
Okay.
If you guys have any questions.
Yeah, does the board have any questions? Doesn't look like we do, so you can have a seat, and we'll see if there's any other testimony. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anybody in the audience who would like to speak in favor of the application for the barber shop at 106 West Hollis Street? Please step forward. Again, name and address for the record, and tell us what you
So
have
I'm
on your
Sheila
mind.
Armand. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. I live at 5 Freshwater Court, and Gage Armand is my son. Gage has been in the barber business for 10 years now. He has successfully run his own barber as an independent contractor for over 6 years. Due to his professionalism and his experience, he has gained a loyal clientele. In addition to his barber career, he owns and resides a duplex that he just mentioned, 17 Lovewell, and it's about a half a mile away from West Hollis Street. The improvements he's made to that property has increased its value and enhanced the neighborhood substantially. He recently purchased 106 West Hollis Street. He is the owner. We have the deed, with the vision of opening his own barber shop. So one other thing is we do have a letter from the Boys and Girls Club for the mentorship that he's working with them on. So if you would like to see that, he can give you that. So I absolutely believe that this barber shop will fill a need in the area and further enhance the neighborhood of West Hollis Street and the community. And I hope you can support this fair and reasonable request.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Does the board have any questions? We can take that paper, we need to hold on to it for 30 days as part of the record, so if you want us to have it, we'll take it, but it's your choice. Thank you. Maybe on the letter, a lot of times we'll just pass it around for the board to quick look at. Does anybody want to see the deed? I don't think.
No, I don't.
Yeah. Okay. Is there anybody else who would like to speak in favor of the 106 West Hollis Street application? Okay, seeing none, is there anybody with questions, concerns, or opposition regarding this application at 106 West Hollis Street? All right, seeing none, I will close
You
the...
have a letter.
Oh, that's right.
I believe that letter was actually in favor.
Yes.
Did we just get a copy of that one tonight, or was that one that we just had by email? I forget.
I believe that was in your,
Or was
is that letter, yep. It should be via email or a hard copy delivered this evening.
Email, but,
Okay, here we are, yeah.
would you have it?
Yeah, it's here. Oh, wait.
No, I don't think that's it. Hold
No,
on.
no, no,
I have it here.
This is the letter of support?
Yes.
Okay, here, it's like a cover letter. Okay, it's this one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So we do have a letter. I won't read the whole thing into the record. It's from Rafael Hernandez. at 9 Pierce Street. Basically, he's noting purchased his home on Pierce Street in the past year, and is in support of the barbershop being to happen in the neighborhood, and believes it'll be a positive addition to the community, and is, basically is in support. So that's, yeah, thank you for that reminder. All right, so then I will close the public hearing and open the public meeting. Anybody want to start with any comments, thoughts about the application? Mr. McCara.
I support the application. I think this is, pretty clearly and historically, it has been a mixed residential commercial area. It's a highly traveled corridor. Obviously, the prior use in this building was a commercial use, a more intensive commercial use, and there are other commercial uses in the surrounding area. And so pretty clearly, this is, again, less intensive. So I see no reason to deny the application.
Mr. Lionel, do you?
Yeah, I also support the application, pretty much for the same reasons Mr. Mancara said.
Okay. Mr. Patry?
I also support, and also for the same reasons.
I'll also support the application.
Okay. And I likewise, yeah, I pretty much would just echo my colleagues here. So would anybody like to offer a motion? Mr. McCarr.
I'd like to make a motion that the request of Mystery LLC, Gage Armand, the applicant, 106 West Hollis Street, requesting a variance from Land Use Code Section 190-15, Table 15-1, to convert a convenience store into a barber shop, be granted. The board finds that granting the variance would not be contrary to the public interest, because the benefit to the applicant of the ability to use a commercial property for commercial purposes certainly outweighs any harm to the public. The spirit of the ordinance would be observed because, again, it allows reasonable use of the property. The granting of variance would do substantial justice because, once again, the benefit to the applicant far outweighs any potential harm to the public. And the values of surrounding properties we do not believe would be diminished. We've seen no evidence to that effect, and the property has been previously used for commercial purposes. We find that the unnecessary hardship would exist because, owing to special conditions of the property that distinguish it from other properties in the area, denial of the variance would result in unnecessary hardship because there is no fair or substantial relationship between the general public purpose of the ordinance provision, in this case the residential zone of the area, and the specific application of that to the property, because property is currently being used as a commercial property in a mixed residential commercial area on a highly traveled corridor, and the use that proposed is actually a less intensive use. And the proposed use is a reasonable use because a barber shop, the proposed use is consistent with the mixed residential commercial character of the area, and barber shops have been a part of that mix historically for as long as we've known. So for those reasons, I make a motion to grant the variance.
Thank you, Mr. McCarr. Is there a second? Mr. Patry, seconded. Thank you. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor? And that passes unanimously. One thing I did fail to note at the introductory remarks, and try to say it after every case for the most part anyhow, is that first of all, you're welcome to move forward with your application, with your usage. There is a 30-day window of appeal if somebody has some concerns. They can file a request for a rehearing if they believe that we acted in error or some other issue in that regard. And that could cause you to have to stop. But in the interim, there is no reason to not proceed with your plans. So, no necessary expectation that will happen, but it's always the possibility for any application that we do approve. So good luck with your efforts, and I think you're all set for tonight. Thank you. We'll move on to case number 2. It is Hanger. Let me make sure I got the right. No, I'm looking at the wrong. I should put that one aside. Case number 2 is Michael Cody and Nicole Ruyard, the owners at 619 South Main Street, Sheet A, Lot 201, requesting a variance from Land Use Code Section 190-17E to exist, E1 to exceed maximum driveway width. 24 feet is permitted, 24 feet is existing, 48 feet is proposed. This is in the RA Zone, Ward 7. Is there somebody here for this application? Yeah. Please come forward and state your name and address for the record.
Good evening. My name is Michael Cody. I reside at 619 South Main Street, Nashua. I've been living there for 21 years. So, can I continue?
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
please just go ahead and tell us.
So the reason why I'm requesting a variance is because I purchased a house that was, it used to be the Semino Plaza owner that moved that house there, and they used to have a driveway on the right side of the house. And I pulled a permit to be able to build a garage because I had a problem with my parking. I had a hill going up. It was more than 7 degrees slope, and it was very dangerous, cleaning that in the winter. So what I did is I applied for a permit to build a garage on the side and get that driveway pulled out of there and put grass. So I did a flat driveway, and that one was approved for 24 feet. But that gives me room to park 2 cars. So if I have a car in the garage, I have to move the car all the time. And what happened too is I did landscaping about, I would be 6 years ago, in front of my house. It's very long. I have a walkthrough, and I got a stone wall that brings it to the driveway that we had there. So when I requested a permit for a new driveway, they asked me to put loom there and cancel that driveway. So now it looks like a granite steps and a retaining wall there. And I'm requesting if I could get at least park a car there. Because what happens on South Main Street, we can't park. People are driving 60 miles an hour and even 70 miles an hour in the 50 zone, and it's dangerous. So when we built the other driveway, we had to do a retaining wall because of the hill. So when we back up, it's dangerous. So I would like to have that driveway on the right side to be able to, because there's a curb, it gives us time to see if a car coming for safety, and especially for safety concern. And the other thing is when we have people coming at our house, like family, they have to park in the street on Waltham Street. And we want to keep a good relationship with the neighbors, because it's impossible to park on South Main Street.
Okay, is that it?
So I would add to, by allowing the variance, I believe that the parking will improve the family and friend and keeping them safe when visiting the area. It will prevent them from having to park on the adjacent street, which currently obstructs the view of the residents and using parking space for their visit. Due to the restriction parking on South Main Street, it is not available option for us. It has come to our attention that multiple properties owners across the street has already 2 driveways on their property, which has helped migrate similar issues. Granting us the opportunity will not only improve the parking situation, but also contribute to the overall safety and the convenience of the neighborhood, like I just mentioned. Upholding the integrity of the spirit of the ordinance regulation in place, demonstration and respect for the community. So the house, having a parking on one side and having my walk-through in the front, I think it will not impact the value of the house, of the neighborhood as well. And then granting the variance would not only benefit the property owner, but also contribute significantly towards maintaining positive relationship with the neighbors and seeing permission to install a second driveway to address certain practical needs and functionality to the property. So that's for why I would ask if it's possible to have that special permission. That would be,
Okay. Do you have any other testimony, or I can see if the board has questions? Okay, any questions from the board? One
because
thing,
I do have pictures here of the neighbors having two driveways, like very across the street, two driveways, and I did talk to them, and they say, well, no, you're okay, your house looks good with that, it will not change no value of the house. If you don't put it, it's gonna look funny, because it's been there for 20 years. It's been there for a long time.
actually, maybe, can you clarify that? Because that does, so are you saying both driveways had actually been in existence for 20 years?
No,
Or-
when I'm saying the driveway that's up, going up the hill in the
Yeah.
garage, the one that was dangerous, that one is when they brought the house there, that was at Seminole Plaza. So that house was moved, and they put it on the hill. The other driveway, that with the retaining wall, that one's been there for what, 12 years, 12 years.
Okay, I guess I'm still confused. So,
When I did the walkway and I did the walk block, that's about 11 or 12 years that I did.
so have you had two driveways for 11 or 12 years, or?
If I had two driveways, when I bought the house, there was one driveway, and you had cars that was still parking on grass there.
Okay,
It was like, it wasn't a driveway, it was just grass, and nothing was growing there.
okay,
So after 10 years, I put some asphalt, crushed stone
Yeah.
asphalt, to be able to park a car there.
okay, okay. So you haven't had two paved driveways?
No,
You've
no,
had-
no, no, no.
You've had like kind of a second functional driveway? Okay, all right.
Because of the safety issue that we had.
So one of the things that I kind of stumbled upon when I was just pulling up your address on like Google Maps was an indication of a business that you have at your house.
Okay.
So is that something that you actively still have?
I have an office there because I'm a project manager for Optoline Enterprise. I have an office there, but
Okay.
I have,
M-
so
m-
what I
maybe
have
this-
is only a mailing address because I teach karate at Methuen,
Okay,
and I teach karate in Riviere. And when we do tournaments, so it's a mailing address I got there.
okay.
Yes.
Because I was seeing that, and it looked like maybe this was in your basement, and I don't know if you might have had some limited time thing from basically the pandemic. Maybe there's some stale information on that website. I don't know, but I thought
Yeah.
that it had some appearance to me that you actually had basically a business running, an active business with clients coming there. So,
No.
okay, that makes a lot more sense.
I have a little boxing ring in the back, like it's the size of two trampolines. that
Yeah,
I
no,
train
no,
with
this-
my wife.
Yeah,
That's it.
I think the things I was seeing, I mean, because I know some of the images, definitely I could tell were not from your home property.
No.
But I wasn't, so, thank you, that clears that up. I feel much better, because I thought maybe something was happening there that you weren't telling us about, and so I feel much better about knowing that that's just simply because of, again, like you said, a mailing address
Yeah,
and
it's a
nothing
mailing
more.
address. Just wanna- yes.
Okay, thank you.
Because I run the Boys and Girls Club for karate sometimes, and World Academy,
Mhm.
Riviere College, and that's the mailing address.
Okay, great.
Thank you, sir.
Any other questions from the board? Okay, I think you can have a seat.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else here who would like to speak in support of the application for the additional driveway width at 619 South Main Street? Seeing none, is there anybody here who has questions, concerns, or opposition regarding the additional driveway width proposed for 619 South Main Street? Okay, seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and we'll open the public meeting. Anybody have initial thoughts or comments? Mr. Mankara?
So I do think that the evidence of all of the different properties that may have two driveways or exceed our driveway width requirements, could speak to the public interest, possibly the spirit of the ordinance. I could see an argument for substantial justice. I don't think there's any evidence that there would be an adverse impact to surrounding properties. What I'm not finding, though, is what the special condition of this property is. As I at least looked around the neighborhood, it appeared to me to be pretty much the same as every other property. I'm looking at the driveway. It's, at least according to the applicant, 55 feet long and 24 feet wide. That's certainly enough to accommodate 4 cars in the driveway in addition to the garage. That's very conventional. A driveway that holds 4 cars is normal. And it's not a situation where, say, because of how close the house or the garage is to the road, they can't fit, more than 2 cars. So I guess I'm just not seeing what those special conditions are. There aren't 2 frontages, which we sometimes have seen. So yeah, that's the part I can't get past.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Lionel, were you going to comment?
Yeah, I mean, in general, I'm not a big fan of exceeding driveway width that much, and like Mr. Mancara, I'm struggling to see what the unusual aspects of the property are that would necessitate a second driveway on the right side, especially given the reasonable size of the existing driveway. So I'm kind of on the fence here. Not at this time.
Sorry, yeah. Mr. Patry or Mr. Boucher, your thoughts at all? Do you have anything to add right now?
Again, echoing my colleague's statements, trying to find what the property brings in itself. I mean, the only thing that I can think of for me would be the location on South Main Street, being a busier road than the other roads. Again, I agree the driveway is large. I'm just trying to get the perspective of, I think, again, driving by a few times, I saw some different vehicles in there. Some of us have smaller cars, some of us have big trucks. I mean, I didn't hear any testimony on what was being parked there. I'm kind of on the fence with it. I'm just trying to really wrap my head around that criteria. But the other, I could find, like Mr. McCarr, I can find support in the other criteria. I just don't know, again, I'm a little, not lost, I just don't know where I'm at with that.
Thank you. Mr. Patry?
I guess what's tilting me towards the application is, it is a busier street, and it does seem that on some level, there's kind of been a second driveway anyway, even if not necessarily formally a driveway. So, those 2 things I think are pulling me towards being in favor.
I'll also add that, again, my going by my research, and it appears to me that going back, looking at topography pictures, that Google Earth and all that the driveway's definitely been there since 2019, being used as a driveway since 2000, and then so. Again, it's been in use. We have no knowledge of any complaints of the driveway usage that caused problem. And again, there is, real nearby, there are homes with two oversized driveways. So it wouldn't be something uncommon in the neighborhood. So I'll just leave that as that.
I do think that this is a tough one because of like, we've talked a bit about the dimensional aspect and how, at least on the surface, it doesn't seem that there's the same kind of issue when there's a single car depth to a driveway or something like that. The thing that makes me feel like there might be a way to support it kind of regarding the hardship, but maybe this gets more into some of the other parts of it, but I do think there might be somewhat of a kind of a strong safety concern here, that it's one thing even to talk about, okay, a driveway that can accommodate, 4 vehicles perhaps readily, and a garage, at least maybe 1 vehicle in the garage. If there's the kind of, any amount of kind of classic car jockeying that has to be done, that's like backing out onto this busy street. Whereas if there's the ability by having the second driveway to have less of that activity that doesn't create as much, basically safety issues for everybody involved, whether it's the people passing, on South Main Street, whether they are going the speed limit or excessively, that's a different story. But even just having to back out onto any busy street in of itself can already be, a pretty, kind of strong kind of safety concern. And so if that's having to happen more frequently because of the limitations, then I feel like perhaps I can support it in that regard, but I don't know if that's a strong enough argument. So I'd be interested in what anybody else has to say on that.
I think we've all sort of given our opinion.
Okay. Would somebody like to make a motion? Mr. Patrick?
Sure. I move that we approve the variance request from Land Use Code Section 190-17E1 to exceed maximum driveway width, 24 feet permitted, 24 feet existing, 48 feet proposed. We find that granting the variance would not be contrary to the public interest because it would relieve pressure on parking in the neighborhood and increase public safety. We find that the spirit of the ordinance would be observed because it would be similar to other properties in the area. We find that granting the variance would do substantial justice because it would benefit the owner and the neighborhood and have a benefit on public safety. We did not have any testimony that the values of the surrounding properties would be decreased. And we find that owing to the special conditions of the property that distinguish from other properties in the area, denial of the variance would result in a necessary hardship because the proposed use is reasonable because it is similar to other properties in the area. It would relieve pressure on parking in the neighborhood and promote public safety.
I'll second.
Thank you. Is there discussion on the motion? All in favor? That's 4 and opposed. Mr. Minkara? That passes 4-1. So there is a 30-day window of appeal, but as of now, your case is approved and you can proceed. If you have any questions, you can contact the planning department through Mr. Durfee, and he can help you out. But otherwise, you're all set for tonight. Good luck.
Who seconded that motion?
I did.
Thank you.
Okay, we will move on to case number 3. The owners are Daniel Sorelio. I probably have gotten that wrong. I apologize if I did not pronounce that correctly. And Kaylee Coburn. The owners, again, at 19 Alice Drive, Sheet E, Lot 487. The request is for a special exception from Land Use Code Section 190-115 to install 334 linear foot fence within a critical wetland buffer. This is in the R9 zone, Ward 1. Is there somebody here to present this case?
Hi, Kaylee and Daniel Cerullo, 19 Alice Drive, Nashua, New Hampshire. So we are in the process of trying to add a picket fence to our yard, so it's approximately the 330 some odd linear feet. So we started this process back in October, where we first contacted City Hall. They pointed us to the Division of Public Works, and we actually got a permit signed from them and said, you're good to proceed. The fence company actually came to our property and started to install the fence, just a couple of posts, and then the Conservation Commission came to our property and stopped the project and informed us that we were on a critical wetland buffer, which we did not know. So we had purchased our property December 18th, 2023, and that was never disclosed to us. So our yard is dry. There is a brook that runs off like the corner of our yard, and then in very wet, like if we get like multiple inches of rain, it does swell up for about a day and then goes down. With that in mind, we decided to put a picket fence. So it would be 4-foot picket fence on the side to allow any water to go through on those wet days. So we had stopped the project, and then we met with the Conservation Commission and took their recommendations. So they kind of pulled all the pictures of the property and thought that the picket fence was a good idea, with the stipulation that there'd be some space at the bottom to allow even more water flow to go through, and a couple of other stipulations, which included writing to the Attorney General just to, make it a law pretty much that you have to disclose critical wetlands, and to the Real Estate Board, which we have done. Were there any other? Oh, and then add the wetland buffer markers for the city requirements. So those were the stipulations, which we have done. The other stipulation was they recommended like a slight turn of the fence, so it would, in the back corner, would run along the brook, run parallel to the brook. So that's kind of where we're at right now. So just a little bit about our family. We have 2 young children. Our son is almost 3. He has autism. So he is in elopement risk. I'm sure our neighbors have seen him running up and down the road. And the brook is a very dangerous place for him. He's drawn to water. So we do worry that if he were to get out, that he would run there and something very bad would happen. So that's kind of the safety that we're wanting this fence for, not for privacy or anything like that, really. It's really just for that kind of containment and the safety of our children. Is there anything you want to add? I think that's all we have for now, unless there are any questions.
Okay, sometimes in the application material we receive, and perhaps you've already seen it and are aware, but that there are, as kind of noted, about the special criteria that have to be met.
Yes.
Are you familiar with the 9 defined special wetland special conditions? Basically, I can just kind of step through them, and you
Sure.
can tell us if you believe can act in the affirmative on all these. So the first one is the use cannot reasonably be avoided. The least damaging, best practicable alternative has been proposed. That acceptable mitigation has been incorporated to minimize loss. That really speaks to, is there some loss of wetland? In this case, there's no real loss, so I think that's really essentially not applicable, but.
Right.
That it's necessary for productive use of the adjoining buildable land. I think your testimony is, this is basically to be able to use it, especially for your family.
Exactly, yes.
That there are no rare or endangered species present. That adequate erosion and sedimentation control methods are in place. You're not, from what I understand, changing anything with the topography of the property. You're
Correct.
simply adding fence and putting posts in, so
Yes.
I don't believe that would be an issue. That the proposed activity shall not significantly impair wetland capacity for wildlife and fishery functions. Again, this seems benign to your situation. Project shall not impair the stability of a water body's bank. The actual water body is not here present.
Correct.
Wetland and buffer function of absorption capacity and storage shall not be impaired. Again, don't think you're changing anything from the actual function of your land.
Right.
Okay. So I think your testimony is you can meet all these criteria
Yes.
as either not applicable or in the affirmative, right?
Yes.
Okay.
One other thing, I guess, to note is we are using a company, Reliable Fence. They've been around 65 years. They're out of Woburn, Massachusetts. They also have a showroom in Manchester. So it's a quality fence company that's doing the install. They've been great through the process. And also to continue on the wetland situation, the Conservation Commission, we were kind of directed towards calling. They gave us a wetland scientist list. I called a few of them. One I spoke with in particular, he's worked with Nashua before. He was very professional. He seemed almost taken back as to why I was calling him. He even used the term de minimis activity. Seems like a fence might not be impacting the wetland too much, so it just might be something like that as well.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Let me see if does the board have any questions? If you bear with me one moment, I feel like I had a question that has escaped me for the moment, and I don't know if it's going to come back or not, and it doesn't seem like it will, so you can have a seat and all right. Is there anybody else who would like to testify in favor of the application at 19 Alice Drive? Seeing none, is there anybody who has questions, concerns, or opposition to the application for the installation of the fencing at 19 Alice Drive?
We did get a letter, and we don't have it printed.
We do have somebody coming up, so let's see.
Maybe it's her.
Yes, I am Judith DeStito. I am the neighbor, 19 Alice Drive.
Okay.
Different
And
person.
I sent her the letter. Do you want me to read?
You don't have to read the whole thing, but I mean, if
Well, it
that's,
says-
if your preference is to just read it,
Yeah,
since that's the,
I've been the original owner of the home since in the 1960s, 65. And we've dealt with this water problem over the years, back and forth. And there's a stream that goes through, it used to come through the spring, fall, winter. And now it's because we get the runoff from Pine Hill Road and Dunbarton Drive. It goes right under to where that water flows. And that's runoff water. And if it's not stopped, if it can't go through the next door property, it will back up, and it's where it's flooded my whole downstairs. I had to raise the sliding glass doors. This fence, they're talking about putting a 6-inch fence, where raise it 6 inches so the water can flow through. Well, I have to hire my landscaper 3 or 4 times a year to come and clean out the brush, the debris, the animals that flow through that. And if a 6-inch height of the fence is not going to help, it's only gonna build it up, and then it's going to come back up into my basement. And this has been going on, like I said, for a long time. And the back part of it would work out fine. But on the each side, where it's a critical wet zone, and then the sewer runs behind there too. We're the only few houses that have a sewer running in our backyard. In the wet zone, it has to be cleared. You can't put a fence on each side. And I says, I'm sorry the people that they purchased this were not informed of the obligation and expectations of purchasing property in a critical wet zone area. However, the facts are the facts and the law. Be careful if this is indeed, if it's approved, because it can cause noted damages might incur due to the action of the city of Nashua and of 19 Alice Drive. And you can see that putting a fence up is gonna just draw all the debris, everything else. It'll be like a dam. And then the water backs up into my property. And they also have a shed That's right on the line there too, where the sewer goes through. That's all I have to say right now.
Let me
Any
see if-
questions?
I know I have some questions, but let me see if the board has.
I just need to know what was the address again.
Oh, yeah, what is your address, please?
What's your address again? What's your
You're-
address?
Pardon?
You're
Your
at
address.
21, Alice?
21, next door.
All right, thank you.
I had a couple questions. One is regarding the sewer line. Are you talking about a storm sewer line or a sanitary sewer?
Sanitary sewer.
Okay, all right,
There's
yeah,
1, 2, 3, 4 houses that have it in the backyard instead of the front.
okay.
And I'm under the impression too that they have easement on each side.
And then the other thing I wanted to ask about is, so just to make sure I understand, so which way is the water flowing?
The water flows, it comes down Pine Hill Road, Dublin Ave, and then where Dunbarton Drive comes, right around Dublin Ave, that's where the water goes through behind the houses on Alice Drive.
So is the water flowing from
It
19?
flows from
No,
Dublin
I just
Ave.
want to go very specific to like your properties. So
It
is the water flowing from 19 into your property, or is the water
No.
flowing from your property
From my property
into
into
theirs?
19.
And your concern is that any of the.
Yes, because the
stuff-
fence will block it up.
And that
then,
will remain
like I
on your
said,
side?
debris.
Okay.
He's cleaned the animals, trees.
Yep.
We've had fish, we've had turtles, everything.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure I understood which way
Yes.
things are flowing
Yes.
and damming, if that's going to
Yes.
be the concern. Okay, thank you.
And then if it backs up there, if it's not all cleared out, it just backs right up. And there's a pond that goes to further on down.
Yep.
And there's been problems there a lot.
Okay, all right, thank you.
But like I said, I've been there since the 60s.
Did you have a question,
I have
Mr. Boucher?
clarification for Mr. Durfee.
Yes.
In the package we got, the black and white picture that we have.
Yeah.
It says, as written here, critical wetlands. Am I to understand that that light gray area is the critical wetlands?
Yes.
And then the current shed is not in
And
the
Public
critical
Works is
wetlands?
aware of this.
Correct.
Thank you.
Is that it?
Yeah, I think we're all set, right?
That's an objection.
Mr. Shaw? She's asking if she's all set.
Okay, no, hang on, no, it looks like maybe not. Mr. McCarr, did you have?
Again, from Mr. Durfee, so if I'm looking at the agenda, it notes that the request is to install the fence within a critical wetland buffer. So is the fence in the buffer or in the actual wetland?
It's both. The application is the same regardless, though. And the COMCON saw the presentation, they're of the understanding, and the minutes reflected that the fence post would actually be in the wetland, though it is apparently seasonal.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, I think you can have a seat, thank you. Is there anybody else in the audience who would like to speak to the application with questions, concerns? Please come on up and state your name and address for the record.
My name is Pat Lyons.
Maybe lower that.
My name is Pat Lyons, and I have lived at 25, which sounds strange. It's 19, 21, and 25. They're consecutive homes. Mine is the closest to Dublin Ave out of the three, and the rain and the water I gave you a letter. I hope you read that.
Yes.
And this is something that we have been literally battling for 50 years. We have rain, it comes into our basements. It frequently backs up to the foundation of my house and my neighbors and the house in question, I believe. I know that there's been water issues there on many occasions. The people that lived there before had been there for 50 years also. So and we pretty much know what the neighborhood is like. And when we bought these houses 50 years ago, There were no houses on Upper Dublin Ave. There were no houses in the Knolls, if you're familiar with the area, that's Dunbarton Drive. And there was not hardly any houses on Pine Hill Road going further west. And now we get that runoff, and as a matter of fact, I can't tell you how many years ago the city came in, there was enough runoff that the city came in and put a culvert under Dublin Ave, and then just let it flow into our backyards. So that's what we're dealing with. 50 years ago, it was bad enough, but with this new construction and with everything else that has been going on as far as construction goes in that neighborhood, we can't take continually having to clean it up. Anything that blocks, actually, the people at 19 Alice Drive had planted some, I think they were lilac bushes, or down where the exact spot that we're talking about. And the water would flow through there, would stop if there was anything in the water. That's where the leaves and the logs and the twigs would accumulate with dead frogs and crawdads. Just a very unpleasant situation. And it's take into consideration the people that have been there for the past 50 years. We're the ones that have been there. We're the ones that have been trying to keep up with all of this new construction and runoff. And it's a tremendous amount of runoff. I'm not sure how familiar you are with Dublin Ave, but as you're coming east from Hollis, there's a little hill and a little turn, and it comes right down Dublin Ave, and then it turns and it goes right between 80 and 90, and that's where my backyard runs through, and Judy's and 19. So I just want you to know that anything that blocks that flow is going to impact at least these three houses, 80 Dublin, 25 Alice, and 21 Alice. And I impact it in a big way. And actually, the city, I noticed somebody asked the question if it was a sanitary sewer. Every time, apparently this is not known throughout a lot of places here, every time I would call and I would tell them we had an issue with the water back there, I would tell them that my sewer is behind my house. And they would say, oh, no, lady, if your sewer is behind the house, you have a septic. And we don't. And sure enough, they would figure it out. But the sewer does run right through there. And is that not the same as the front of the house? Doesn't the city have the right to a certain easement from the Alice Drive street through my property? And if there's a sewer that runs through the back, would there also be an easement on either side of that? That's my question.
I can comment that, I mean, we don't handle that, but my expectation would be that your deed probably reflects some sort of a sewer easement, because I think ultimately the city would need access to that sewer. But really, I mean, it's an interesting issue, but quite frankly, the presence of the sanitary sewer really isn't something that is going to have any bearing on our decision or is really germane to this case. So I don't really think it's something that the board will be considering one way or the other, so I feel like it's.
Well, if you can't get to the brook, because it's all backed up, if it's all backed up in my backyard and in her backyard, and it stops the flow.
Well, I think we're talking about the sanitary sewer pipes are underground. They're handling the sewer effluent. They're not handling water runoff and all that, even if there is some overflow things. So,
I totally understand that, Mr.
yeah.
Shaw, I do.
So.
But I also know that the water comes through that culvert, and that is not going through any underground stuff. And anything that stops, when the Reynolds has planted those bushes, everything would back up. Because when that water flows, it flows pretty fast, and it's taking logs and stones and some wildlife. We've found stuff back there that will no longer flow right through the little pond that's at the end of Dublin Ave, halfway through. Just needed to bring that to your attention.
Let me see
We've
if the
been-
board has any questions. Any questions from the board? Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Is there anybody else that has questions, concerns, or opposition to the 19 Alice Drive request?
Hello, I'm Frank Testito. I'm my mother's trustee of 21 Alice Drive. I'm also a real estate broker and own the Better Homes and Gardens in Hollis, New Hampshire. I want to make it very clear, my mother has lived there for 65 years. This property has been evolving due to water erosion. And I'm very familiar that all 6 of you are very familiar with wetlands and encroachment acts, especially critical wetlands. If you come to my mother's house and do an assessment, you will notice a stream bed which has been permanently gouged out of the grounds, which have been manicured by her landscaper. She's 86 years old. She has not specifically put a stream bed in her backyard. It is all sand. It's basically a bottomless, material that has been deposited there from this stream. It comes through at rapids at sometimes. I've been to the property and watched it. It tends to swell on 19 because it's a level grass area, so it spreads out. That's why you would not notice a stream, but the culvert has grown. And if any 6 of you would like to come out, I would be more than happy to show you. It is eroding roots of trees which have been there for 60 years. You can't make this up. We do not want a stream in our backyard. If you set a precedent of putting a fence, a PVC fence, picket, or whatever it might be, it is a blockage. And it is a potential, it's a human man-made blockage. It's not made by nature. This could cause catastrophic events, and I do say that word very clearly because I want you all to understand. Because if something does happen, like I said, you're responsible for this. We've been in touch with Public Works. We've been in touch with the city in numerous times every year. Because with this flow, it comes over and it will encroach upon the properties. It's eroding. We have not done anything with it. We have to live with this stream in our backyard. Unfortunately, the folks that purchased 19 did not do their due diligence, nor did their broker, who should have disclosed to them that this is critical wetlands, which leads into the Tamposi property, which is a vernal, which is active. If you want to come by and see that, be my guest. But this is not going to change, and if there is a barrier on that property, whether it be 6 inches, it will do nothing. Because if it starts capturing everything, a PV fence will be lovely, but it's going to be like the Hoover Dam. It's going to back up, and it's going to come even further and encroach further on the stream bed. I want to be very clear about this because it's been happening for years. It's not just with a little bit of rain. You can see a sandy bottom stream bed in my mother's backyard. So what we are being is very obvious about this, and we're giving notice. Before you make your decision, be very careful and wise about it, because like I said, it could have repercussions because you are, in essence, creating a flow on wetlands. That's just what we want to be very clear about. We want to be neighborly, we want to be doing this, but when it comes to putting a fence across an active stream, you are going to have a problem. And it can lead backwards. And my mother's house is basically on the flow side of it. Then it dissipates. I do feel very badly about these people that have purchased this property. But unfortunately, the idea of putting up a fence might seem trivial to you folks, but it's not when you look at the year-round ramifications. Unfortunately, we are in an ever-changing, world, and people have built up around us, as Mrs. Lyons stated. And, like I said, Nashua has become overdeveloped, and we are paying for it. But please come by the property at 21 and look at the stream. And we have not actively carved out a 4-foot stream bed, which is there. And it just does not end at 19. It continues to float through. They're just very fortunate that they have a very grassy, level area which absorbs it, and then it trickles down into the Tamposi property, who are my clients. So I'm very familiar with, the way this flows. And if you look at the overhead, 19 also has 2 vernals which go into it from the Coliseum Ave property, which was the prior Daniel Webster College and Airport. It is a flood zone which runs off of there. So, I do apologize to our neighbors, but we have to also look at the property values which this will impact. That's all I really have to say. But you have to be very careful when you make a decision, because it's not just a fence, it's changing something else. And like I said, that can lead to ramifications of, damage on a property, in values to a property. And last I signed up for, we do not have, a pond in our backyard, which we will.
Let me
Yes,
see if the
Commissioner.
board has any questions. Were you possibly in attendance at the Conservation Commission for
No,
their
I was
discussion on
not.
this?
No.
Okay, all right.
Well, I've been speaking to the Public Service Department and to the city in numerous times, and they told us, in fact, to call if there has been any activity on fences or anything of the sort.
No, I was trying to understand that, the part of the Concom's recommendation is to have that 6-inch,
What would 6 inches do? Over a year, it's going to fill in naturally, and no one's ever going to maintain that. And then it's going to be, that 6 inches is going to fill in, and then it's going to be nothing.
okay, I'm just trying to understand what the discussion was at the Concom, if you had any insight into that.
No, I
But I
do
appreciate
not.
your thoughts.
I do
Okay.
not. But I'm surprised that they would suggest even putting something across, knowing the history of this.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Because there is a very long history.
Okay.
And again, we apologize to the neighbors that they were not privy to this, because if they had asked, it would have gladly been told, or their broker should have told them or exposed it, or the past sellers. It's been very obvious.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody else with questions, concerns, or opposition to the fence proposal at 19 Alice Drive? Okay, since we have had opposition testimony, you can come back up and speak to, you're only really supposed to speak to things that have been brought up, so this part is not for necessarily, other new information unless it relates to specifically trying to address the concerns that have been raised.
Okay, so Kaylee Daniel Cerullo, 19 Alice Drive. A lot of the verbiage that's being tossed around, streams, things like that, it is not a stream. That has been deemed by the city and by the Conservation Commission. We talked about that specifically. It's more of a drainage swell, so it does swell when there's a lot of rain. A couple other things that we want to mention. A lot of our neighbors, including 25, have fences. So there is a fence on 25 Alice, a picket fence. And so if this were true, what that would build up even with the gap, then it wouldn't really get to 21 Alice, and that's where they're saying is a big problem. The water is still flowing through 25 to 21 to 19. The Conservation Commission looked at photos on the GIS map from years and years and years prior on all of our neighbors' properties, and there was no
Evidence of active
water or
You
anything
check
like
that
that.
it's dry the entire time. Again, it runs off when it rains very heavily, but then proceeds to.
Please make sure you're close
Sorry,
enough to the
sorry,
mic.
yeah,
Yeah.
When it rains heavily, at least, we haven't been there for as long as our neighbors have, but we have seen it swell up, but then it will drain within a day, and that goes back to, in our case, being dry. So, I guess that's why we initially, we did think it through in the sense that we did choose the picket for partially that reason, to allow the water to run through, and I understand the idea of debris getting caught along the bottom, but, if we are putting the gap, and the water should be able to run through.
Yeah, as evidenced by our neighbors' current existing fences, it's not seeming to cause a backup, because it is flowing through 25, 21, 19 still, even with the fences in existence. Yeah, I think that's all. Is that it?
As far as rebuttals, I think that's it.
I think
Okay.
that's it.
Let me make sure the board doesn't have any questions. Mr. Boucher?
Just to clarify, did the Conservation Commission visit your property and look at your property? Did you, or do you know of if they went out there?
I don't know if they, did you?
No, Deb, I forget her name.
The chair.
Chisholm.
She
came
did
by.
come by and walked through our property
Okay.
But-
prior to our meeting, and she did speak at the meeting as
Okay.
well.
All right, okay, thank you.
All right, I think we're all set.
Okay, thanks.
As I noted in the introduction, only one of you that spoke in opposition, if any of you want to come back up, you can choose somebody. If nobody wants to speak any further, it's not necessary either. So it's really up to those of you, if so. Okay. And just name and address again. And
Again, it's
and
Pat Lyons.
Go ahead and raise that down. Yeah.
At 25 Alice. And first of all, the fences that were mentioned are north of the stream or the brook. It does not impede that anywhere. And what else was I going to say? Oh, and plus 25 and 80 Dublin and 21 is not in a crucial wetland area. So those fences have all been approved just fine. I just need you to know that the fences are north of what we're discussing. Does that make sense to you?
Yep. Okay, thank you. All right, that will close the public hearing, and we will open the public meeting. Anybody want to start out? Mr. Boucher?
Looking at the criteria in itself, going through the criteria, again, specifically going through all the 5 criteria, in general, I'm just saying outright that I believe that the criteria is met for this. So now we come to really what the main issue is, or that's been brought up, is about the actual conditions of the property and what the neighbors who have lived there a long time have seen. I do believe, and I know that the Conservation Commission are people who are passionate about the environment. I don't think that this was taken lightly by them. And again, like us, right, I only asked whether or not they had, the reason I asked if they went out there was as a group specifically, but like what we do, we go on our own time and we look at cases and we go. So I've driven by this property. I don't walk on somebody's property, but I go by. So, but as stated, that they knew that at least that the chair had viewed the property. We have sat on many cases where the Conservation Commission gives us recommendations, looked at all kinds of projects, big and large and small than this. So where I'm at is I don't have any data or anything to tell me anything different than what they're recommending. I believe what the applicants are saying is what they believe they're saying. I just don't have any, sometimes we've seen people bring in pictures showing here's the high water and this is what we see. I don't see that. I'm not saying that it doesn't exist. Again, I don't know how to address that, but I do believe that the criteria has been met. I just don't know how this would affect a decision on this case for myself.
Thank you. Anybody else? Mr. McCarr?
So I I am struggling with this, somewhat, but I am inclined to support it largely in deference to the findings of the Conservation Commission. I think that, first of all, a fence is a normal and reasonable use in the backyard of a single-family home. It does strike me that it was looked at thoughtfully. Locating the picket fence towards the rear of the property, it's pretty clear that when the Conservation Commission looked at it, based on the criteria, the conditions that they are recommending, it was thoughtful, bending the fence in the back to avoid the particularly large tree, and the specific recommendation that the 6-inch gap remain, that the fence itself be 6 inches above ground, was clearly intended to, well, I shouldn't say that, I would assume it was intended to allow for the water flow, probably for the flow of critters as well, as I would imagine. And so that does incline me to support it. I'm not an expert in hydrology, and it does strike me that the people in the neighborhood have been struggling with issues related to water. From most of the testimony that I've heard, it appears that that's more related generally to changes in flowage patterns and development in the broader area, and I absolutely sympathize with the impacts that they face. But I don't see this particular fence, and I will say, given the span of the fence, I do think the 6-inch gap is substantial. It would take a lot for that to actually turn into a dam, and the water flow would have to be quite tremendous, I think, for this to really alter that flow. So for those reasons, I'm inclined to support the application.
Thank you. Mr. Lionel?
Yeah, generally, I follow what the Conservation Commission recommends. They are certainly more expert in this area than I am. And I definitely sympathize with the neighbors who, in their testimony, have been experiencing water issues, but I'm not seeing that this fence is going to make matters worse for them, given the Conservation Commission's recommendation for how it should be constructed. So I'm inclined to support this application, and would hope that the issues that the other neighbors are having with water can be addressed through the city, although the testimony is that they've been trying for years, and that's unfortunate. But from our perspective, I don't see a good reason to deny this application.
Thank you. Mr. Patry, any comments?
Sure. So, I certainly don't want to discount the neighbor's testimony, but looking, I think, strictly at what we have to look at, which is the criteria in the ordinance and whether there should be a variance from the wetland special conditions. I mean, looking specifically at those conditions, I'm also inclined to support the application.
Yeah, I think this is one of those, I mean, the irony to me in one sense is usually when we have concerns about flow and water flow, it's more from the concern of what is going on the given property and that potentially impacting adjacent properties. In this case, this property is kind of downstream of the noted issues, so they're not actually the ones who, anything they're doing with their property are causing the flow to be going elsewhere. It's passing through their property. It's clearly, this issue lies quote unquote upstream by multiple properties and has, again, this long history, long unfortunate history that seems to be, there's commonalities to everything from, probably some of the way this neighborhood was built back in the 60s is long before a lot of consideration was given for things like wetlands or, runoff onto other properties, et cetera, and then just so much has changed, through decades of development. But I also think that it's very clear that there is at least trying to minimize any impact of putting a fence and having a barrier present is offset by having this raised part of the structure. And I think it's noted that it's only applicable to the sides because the back of the property is not where there's any concern about flow. So I think, again, I will also defer to the Concom and their considerations on this, but I think it's an unfortunate situation, but I do not believe that this fence is going to do anything to impact the wetland function and buffer capacity or any of those criteria that we walked through with the applicant. And the rest of the criteria, I believe, are met. So essentially, you know, this might not be one of those things that sometimes folks in the audience like to hear, but we are limited in what we can do with cases like this. When criteria are met, we need to approve. It's very specific. It's not like the variances where there's a lot more kind of uncertainty. This is much more specific, and so I believe the testimony meets the criteria, and I think it's incumbent upon us to approve, so I will be supporting it. Would somebody like to offer a motion? I'll do it. Thank you, Mr. Lionel.
I'd like to make a motion on behalf of Daniel Cirillo and Rayleigh Coburn, owners at 19 Alice Drive, requesting special exception from Land Use Code Section 190-115 to install 334 linear foot fence within a critical wetland buffer. The board has had extensive testimony on this, but we find that the requested use is listed as a special exception, so they are requesting work in a wetlands buffer. We believe that the requested use will not create undue traffic congestion or create undue pedestrian safety. It will have no impact on that because it's not where traffic or pedestrians travel. We believe that the requested use will not overload any public water, drainage, or sewer system. There is no additional load on any of those being created by this fence. And there, let's see, requested use, developed use in the immediate area or in any other area of the city will be unduly subjected to hazards affecting health, safety, or general welfare. There has been testimony suggesting that creation of this fence will cause a blockage of water that's currently flowing through the property and will affect other properties. The Conservation Commission recommended elevating the fence to alleviate that concern, and we defer to the Concom in that finding. All the special regulations for this in this article are fulfilled, and the requested use will not impair the integrity or be out of character with the district or immediate neighborhood, nor is it detrimental to the health, morals, or welfare of residents of the city. So I make a recommendation that we approve this special exception.
And seconded by Mr. Minkara. Thank you. Is there any discussion on the motion? All in favor? And that passes unanimously, 5-0. You're welcome to proceed with your fence. There is the 30-day window of appeal, so those that are here with concerns still could pursue that path, or somebody else could. So just beware if you have any questions or concerns about how to proceed with your application and going forward with the fence. You can certainly contact Mr. Durfee and staff at the planning department. So, thank you and good luck with everything. That will take us to case number 4. The owners are Blair and Brandon Wright at 7.5 New Street, sheet 28, lot 20, requesting 1, a variance from Land Use Code Section 190-47B3 to allow home occupation use in a detached accessory structure where it is required that the home occupation be carried on strictly in the principal building. And secondly, for a special exception from Land Use Code, Section 190-47B, for a major home occupation for a bakery within the detached garage. This is in the RB zone, Ward 7. Is there somebody here to present this case? Welcome. Again, state your name and address for the record, please.
Good evening, board members. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. My name is Blair Wright, and I, along with my husband Brandon Wright, own 7.5 New Street here in Nashua. As you've already stated in your introduction, I'm here tonight to seek approval for a variance and a special exception that would allow the operation of a major home occupation in the detached 2-car garage located on our property. I am an award-winning wedding cake designer and pastry chef. My work has been featured in magazines. I'm the season 8 winner of Food Network's Halloween Baking Championship, and I'm a trained pastry chef with a degree from the Culinary Institute of America. Why that applies, your approval this evening would allow me to take my full-time wedding cake design business, Floretta Sweet, which I previously owned and operated out of our last home, which was in the state of Pennsylvania, and move it here to Nashua. We just moved here, and we purchased this home this past fall. Let me first start with some details and clarity about the variance for you. As you know, originally, in-home occupations in the state of New Hampshire must take place in the primary structure on the property. As I was researching the necessary information needed to help successfully transfer my business here to Nashua, I spoke with environmental health specialist Michael McGinnis from the Nashua Division of Public Health. He's a health inspector here. He informed me that while the state of New Hampshire generally allows in-home homestead food businesses that can operate inside the primary residence, the city of Nashua has special rules that does not allow food businesses to operate out of one's home, here in Nashua specifically. However, he stated that since I have a detached structure on my property, that would suffice as a business location since it was not in the primary residence. He assured me that if I was granted zoning approval, he would work with me and my contractor to ensure that the space was up to the proper requirements mandated by the health department, the building department, and the fire marshal. Currently, we have like an email thread already started, but we're just kind of paused waiting for this step to be approved. The special exception that I'm seeking approval for is the operation of my cake design business as a major home occupation in the detached garage space. Naturally, the concern with any home-based business being operated in a residential area is the potential disturbance of the neighborhood and its residents. However, since the business is a private studio space meant for the creation of wedding cakes that will then be delivered on site rather than a retail bakery that anyone can visit, granting the requested variance will not be contrary to the public interest and will not affect the character of the neighborhood or the well-being of its residents. This is not a bakery where people are coming and getting donuts and pies. It's a private studio space, kind of like the barber shop that operates on an appointment basis. As far as day-to-day operations are concerned, I am the sole employee. I have no plans of hiring beyond that. The only visits to the studio will be clients picking up cake samples to try before they hire me, which occurs maybe 1 to 2 times a month by appointment only, and typically only involves like their car or maybe somebody that's coming with them, and that could easily fit in the driveway of our property. We have a very long driveway, which you've seen on the plot plans. There will not be commercial deliveries to the space as I source my ingredients and supplies locally or via Amazon, and the Amazon truck is always in our neighborhood as usual, so that will be no difference. Therefore, no additional traffic flow or other disturbances will be created. The proposed use will observe the spirit of the ordinances because the major home occupation will still be on the property and will not affect the essential character of the neighborhood or the residents any more than if it were inside the main structure of the home. The proposed use will also not diminish the value of the surrounding properties because no additions to the property will be made that would affect the current layout or view of pre-existing structures. It will look exactly the same. The business will be located inside the pre-existing garage rather than needing to build a new structure. The only changes would be made to the existing detached space and would occur internally. As far as construction's concerned, just some specifics about that, I'm planning on working with Josh Madugno from Dubes General Contracting to complete the internal refinishing needed to complete the space according to code with input from the health and building departments as well as the fire marshal. The construction plans include removing the garage doors, adding windows, insulating the structure, adding flooring and lighting, and then running gas, water, electric, and sewage from our house to the space. And that will all be run underground. So once it's done, it won't look any different than it looks now, other than lack of garage doors and just windows in place of that. In conclusion, with your consideration, I'm asking that the variance and special exception be approved so I can move forward and start the construction needed to move my business forward. I'm very excited to become a contributing part of the community here in Nashua and to serve the couples of New England as they embark on their journey of marriage. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have, and thank you for your time this evening.
Questions from the board? The one thing, we have the major home occupation criteria. Have you already reviewed that?
Yes, so the only thing that I want to note is that it is talking about 300 square feet. The garage itself is 400. You'll see in the packet that I submitted, the plans, the kitchen is not going to take up all 400 square feet, and I'm going to make sure that we work with the contractor. I can't do anything about the existing 100 square feet, but the goal is to have the kitchen exist in the allotted 300 square feet of space, just so you know. I don't want to like shorten the building or anything. I feel like that's going to create more unnecessary money and hardship for the project.
And the obvious, you know, the one thing that's why the variance is part of this is that about the use being carried on strictly within the principal building. So that's the obvious one that without the variance can't be
Yes,
met. So,
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like you require it to be in the home, the health department requires it to not be in the home, so it's.
Yeah, we have a
Yeah.
conflict within.
But the garage space will just, for my business, will be so much better and will like really allow me to be able to create what I need to create, and the license that I need to get through the health department will help. So in the end, I think it's worth the extra steps that I need to take.
Okay, thank you. Mr. McCarr?
Just a point of clarification for your benefit, but
Sure.
that existing, I mean, that remaining 100 square feet doesn't have to be empty space. You could certainly be using it for, you know,
Great.
yard storage or whatever.
Absolutely. I'll take it.
Okay.
Okay,
I think you
thank
can
you.
have a seat, and we'll see if there's any other testimony. Is there anybody who would like to speak in favor of the proposal regarding 7.5 New Street? Seeing none, is there anybody here who has questions, concerns, or opposition regarding the proposal for 7.5 New Street?
Good evening. My name is Carl Roberts. I live at 9A New Street. I'm the direct abutter left of the applicant. I've lived on this street for 20 years, and it's always been a residential street. It should always be a residential street. I feel by approving something like this, we're opening up a can of worms to everybody else who has a detached garage or a garage on the street to open up an additional business, like myself. I also have a 2-car detached garage. Something like this gets disapproved, I could come back to you and say, hey, I'm going to do something with my garage now. I'm going to turn half into a tattoo shop. I'll turn the other half into a barber shop or find something else to make extra income. New Street is a very small, dead-end street of 10 houses. It is a very busy dead-end street with the amount of people who go down that street on a daily basis who realize that it's not a dead-end street because they don't see the sign at the end. Because they think they can get into the apartment complex that was built on East Hollis Street, even though they can't. So you see all these people turning around on a daily basis into our driveways. Plus you have Amazon trucks 3 times a day, UPS, FedEx twice a day, because you have the ground and air, so their trucks are coming. There's just been a lot of traffic on our little street. In 20 years, this street has changed dramatically with people improving their houses and doing things. This is out of character of the neighborhood to add a business to where 10 houses are to now let's bring in businesses. If I decide to sell my house, that 2-car garage can now be anything because you've approved one business, so now you have to approve something else. I just feel that it's a tumbling effect down the road. I don't know if this will increase or decrease my property value, but I feel a house with a garage is more important here in New Hampshire, where we have 4 seasons, than a house with a bakery. That house has sold more times on this street that I've lived here. They're the 4th or 5th owner in 20 years. That's the only house that sells. Everybody else seems to stay. Melissa's been there for 12 or 15 years. I'm the 3rd longest resident of that street, because you get David at the end and Jody. They're the only 2 that have lived there longer than I have. The street has changed with new people. That's the only house that changes hands every 4 to 5 years. I can't imagine a bakery coming in. What if this business doesn't succeed and she decides, oh, on the weekends I'm going to open up donuts and cakes and pies because I'm not making enough money just on wedding cakes? That's my concern, and I think some of the other residents' concern, especially when she calls this a major bakery. This, major home business allowance and 300 square feet of a garage. I'm kind of concerned that it may become more of a bakery. I think of a bakery as Crosby's Bakery, Frederick's, the bakery you see at Shaw's, at Hannaford. If she's just doing cakes, why can't she do that inside her house? This is a residential street. It should always be a residential street. It's a very small street. It's been there for probably 100 years. I believe my house was built in 1947. It's always been residential. It should always remain residential. We should not open up a can of worms to allow one business in. And now I can do something with my garage because you're allowing it. And now Melissa can do something, and then the other people who own the duplex across the street, they can now do something with their garage because we're allowing it. I just see a tumbling effect happening as people are trying to buy houses and realtors are trying to get out to people, hey, let's sell your house, let's sell your house. This house, like I said, their house, they're the 5th owners in 20 years. That house doesn't stay on the market.
Okay, I think your time is probably up and you're
Okay.
kind of repeating things, but.
Sorry.
So a couple of comments.
Yeah.
So we treat each case on its own merits, and I know a lot of people think that if something gets approved, that means precedence for something else to happen just because something happened on their neighborhood. That's not the way the board works. It's not the way our land use code allows us to work. So it's not, that is not something that just because somebody does one thing, that it's going to automatically have to be allowed for somebody else. Every case is treated differently and specifically on its own merit. So I want to point that out because
Okay.
that is a general concern that a lot of folks
Yes.
have. Also, it's not her characterization about this being a major home occupation. That
But
is
it's written in
no,
here.
excuse me, let me finish.
Okay.
That is how the city defines it. Our land use code defines what are minor home occupation and what are major home occupation, and the planning department works with applicants to determine where something fits based on the criteria. So it's not the applicant's choice, it's how it's defined by our code. So that's another thing. And also, what we are being asked to approve is specifically what the applicant has stated that she plans to do regarding the scope of the business. She would not be allowed to run some sort of foot traffic-based bakery at this location without coming back for additional approval. That is not what we are approving. We are only approving the scope of the business as defined to us in this application and by testimony. So that is the owner as a single person doing this, the very limited type of visit. So there isn't that opportunity for encroachment or expansion of use just because we've approved this. It's very specific what's being asked for approval. So I also just want you to understand that she can't just automatically say, well, I'm running a bakery here, I could start selling to the public and having, foot traffic or driving, whatever. So I just want to address all those things for
Okay.
you so that it's clear that those
Thank you.
are not things that can happen. And the applicant is more than welcome to speak in rebuttal, but some of these things I want to point out more specifically because they're a matter of the way the board functions, the way the law functions, and what we're being asked to approve or not. So
Okay.
just wanted to clarify all that. So,
Thank you.
thank you. And is any questions from the board otherwise? Okay.
You covered everything I was going to say.
Okay. All right, thank you. Is there anybody else with questions, concerns, or opposition to the proposal at 7.5 New Street?
Good evening. My name is Melissa Valcourt. I'm the owner of 10 New Street. I've owned the home for over 15 years now. I'm not necessarily opposed to this situation. I do want to remain friendly with my new neighbors, but I am on the fence. I am concerned, like Carl has stated, our street is a very small dead-end street. The sign is rather small at the beginning of the street stating that we are a dead-end street. Unfortunately, over the course of many years, the traffic has become quite excessive for a dead-end street. Also, like Carl stated, that may be partially in turn due to the condos that were built, technically, I believe, on Marshall Street. But at the same time, we've had a parking issue on our street, so this does concern me a bit. I don't know if there is going to be a policy in place that will enforce the parking has to take place within the driveway. This is a concern only because over the course of me living at the residence for over 15 years, I've seen fire trucks come down our street, ambulance, mainly in the course of the middle of the night, but sometimes during the day, and they can't turn around on our street. They have to back up. There's no signage there stating that you cannot park on the side of the street. I do know that there is a law in place that there is no overnight parking. Unfortunately, that has not been enforced. There are cars parking overnight. They may get tickets, but they continue to park there. My concern is when we do have vehicles parked on the side of the street, if we ever have an emergency in the middle of the evening, night, even during the day, fire trucks have a difficult time getting down our street, up and down our street. So that is a concern. I don't know if that's something that will be part of the plan, if it is approved, but that is a concern of mine. I also have a concern of how that will affect our taxes for our homes. The city of Nashua taxes have gone up significantly, and I don't know if this will impact it. I'm not educated enough on that portion to know how that will affect me as my homeowner on 10 New Street. I also am concerned, like Carl had stated, that the grant would be for her to have a sole employee herself, but does this allow for, if the business was ever to expand, could it potentially be granted that there would be other employees? That is.
Let me just jump in because it's a
Sure.
similar kind of thing that I tried to clarify. That her application is for one employee. So if she wants to hire an additional person and increase the scope of the business, that would require a new application and a new request. So
Okay.
this idea of expansion is not allowed beyond what's been proposed.
Okay, understood. It's just, there's a lot of questions because this is something new to us.
Yeah.
Again, it's not a commercial street, it's residential,
Well,
so we
let
all
me just jump in and
are
also make a few
concerned.
comments to help
Sure.
clarify. And also a couple comments maybe, and some of these are beyond the scope, but I'll just bring them up because,
Mm-hmm.
so regarding your dead-end street sign, I might suggest that you contact your alderman, your ward alderman, to
Okay.
see if maybe they could help you get the city to install a larger dead-end street sign explaining what goes on there. That might be just a helpful method to maybe deter some of that excess traffic coming down the street. So, or you could also contact the street department. But most of the time, it really helps if you get your ward alderman involved because then they can basically kind of help that.
Good
You can
idea.
also even contact the mayor's office or that kind of thing, explain.
I
what's going
appreciate
on.
that.
So I would suggest that because it sounds like you have some evidence that says, yeah, people just don't recognize this. And regarding traffic, I mean, the applicant already noted, she's got the long driveway. There's at most going to maybe be 2 cars coming a couple times a month. So, and the major home occupation criteria is that the use will not cause vehicular traffic, which is substantially different from that which currently exists on the street. So the kind of extra traffic that has been proposed for this we would view as extremely minor and nothing that is going to change the general nature of traffic on your street. So I just want to clarify that for you
Okay.
also.
Thank you.
Mr. Lionel?
Yeah, and not that it's relevant to our discussion, but you asked about tax impact.
Yes.
My guess would be that turning a garage into a commercial space would increase the applicant's property taxes and therefore decrease yours.
Okay, I'll take that.
That's just my theory.
I didn't think that it would necessarily impact me, but again, it's not something I'm educated
Might
enough
only be
on
pennies ultimately.
Yeah,
but
to know about, so it was a concern.
Yeah.
Any other questions, comments from the board? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else with questions, concerns, or comments regarding 7.5 New Street proposal for the major home occupation? Okay, seeing none, you're welcome to come back up and speak to what's been brought up. And then just for the two of you, one of you will have the opportunity to come back up and rebuttal if you choose to.
Thanks. I appreciate my neighbors bringing up their concerns. That's super valid. You got a potential business opening on your street, I understand. I just want to clarify some things for you. So we moved here. My husband is from this area. He's
Sorry,
from Lowell.
I need you to
Can you
speak
hear me?
into the
I'll
mic-
speak to
into
you.
the
We
mic.
moved here. My husband is from Lowell, so we have a lot of friends and family in the area, and they're over visiting all the time. So I would almost argue that we probably have more friends and family's cars in the driveway than I would ever have business cars. I've operated my business for 5 years full-time out of my home in Pennsylvania, and my neighbors there didn't know that I had a business until they saw me carrying 50-pound bags of flour into my house. And they were like, why are you doing this every week? Like, what's happening in there? Like, are you baking for coworkers? So my goal is to be as low profile as possible. I do not have our address posted on the internet. It's a private thing. You get the information when you make an appointment. I have no desire to be Crosby's. I've worked in the industry for 15 plus years. I don't want to be making donuts and pies. And I've purposely honed in on exactly what it is that I want to be doing so that I looked for this home, purchased this home, and plan on staying in this home specifically because of what I do for a living. We're a young family. My son is 1. I have no plans on moving him anytime soon. I understand that the home has been sold and changed hands. I can't do much about that. But our plan was to come here from Pennsylvania and put down roots where we have friends and family. So I'm already paying enough for this home. I don't plan on selling it anytime soon. I know that doesn't help you guys. It's more to speak to them. I'm also putting over $60,000 into this renovation, so I wouldn't do that and then leave. And I also want to clarify that this isn't a hobby, it's my sole source of income. So I'm not just doing this for funsies, like this is my full-time job, and this decision hinges on how I can move forward in doing that, so, thanks.
Board have any questions? Okay.
Thanks.
Set. Thank you. And would one of you like to come back up that had the concerns? Okay. Okay. And just one other thing, just another FYI, like you talked about the parking and the enforcement on overnight parking. That's another thing you can contact parking enforcement about and ask them to maybe do more regular overnight things. I know that you know, it's all limited, but it's.
I have one question. I know that's not what we're here to speak about, but who is above parking enforcement? Who do I reach out to? Is it the police department?
Parking is within the Economic Development Department, so you could contact Economic Development.
Economic development?
Yes.
Thank you.
I did not realize that. Learned something tonight. Not exactly where you might think it would be. but- Okay. I will close the public hearing and open the public meeting. Anybody want to start? Mr. Lionel?
Yeah, I'm in support of this application. The applicant's proposed use is going to be entirely internal. to the detached structure should have no visible effect on the neighborhood. And as I suggested, it might actually improve at least the property value of that house, causing increased taxes. But I don't know exactly how all of that works. I don't see, I mean, the various objections have been speculative about things that our approval does not permit. Therefore, I don't see any reason to oppose this application.
Thank you. Anybody else want to offer anything? Mr. Patrick?
Sounds like a great business idea that will have a very minimal impact on the neighborhood. So I'm in favor.
Mr. Minkara?
I'm also in favor. I think it's very, very low-key. It's virtually invisible. It's really, really hard to see the building from the street or other areas. And I do agree that what we're approving is specifically what was requested. That said, though, given a couple of factors. One, I'd never been down New Street before. I've never had a reason to go down New Street, and it is a very small street. It is very tight. There is no cul-de-sac. Turning around, you're turning around in someone's driveway. That's the way it is. And I do appreciate the concerns that some of the abutters have raised, and so I might suggest, when it's appropriate, that although we're approving what's explicitly requested, we may want to put some specific conditions, perhaps with the variance, but I would suggest that we just be explicit that there are no retail sales from the property, that client parking is in the driveway, must be in the driveway, and that there are no non-resident employees. I throw that out there, but overall I'm in support.
Okay.
I'm also in support of the application.
Thank you. Yeah, I am as well, and so I think, this is, I mean, probably if it wasn't for having to come before this board, probably nobody would know about what you're doing, but now we've outed you. So, yeah. And I guess, and part of the reason we're also here is it does seem like there's kind of an inherent conflict between what the health department is requiring and what our code has. So this is almost also a classic case of needing to try to balance out the intention of the various laws that are in place. And we have the flexibility to alter the land use code. We don't have the flexibility to alter the health department's view of this. Although I did find it curious about learning about that is knowing of a business like this that was being done out of the primary home structure for many years that's no longer operating in my part of the city, but maybe that didn't go through the same process as this is, so that might be a very different situation, but I was surprised that there was this conflict, so. So we do have both the special exception and the variance. I think I always get a bit twisted around about which we should do first. I think
I would recommend doing the variance first. That allows the use to be outside of the primary structure, which then the special exception would constitute.
Okay. So, would somebody like to start us off with with this case and with a motion regarding the variance request? Mr. McCarthy, thank you.
So I'd like to make a motion that the application of Blair and Brandon Wright at 7.5 New Street, requesting a variance from Land Use Code Section 190-47B3 to allow home occupation use in a detached accessory structure where it's required that the home occupation be carried on strictly in the principal dwelling be approved. We find that granting the variance would not be contrary to the public interest because given the nature of what's proposed, it's really in an existing structure, well hidden behind the home. It would not substantially alter the character of the neighborhood. There are no retail sales, so it really is something that be largely invisible. So I also see no, injury to public rights, and I think it does protect the essential character, residential character of the neighborhood, so it doesn't conflict with the zoning ordinance. I think the spirit of the ordinance would be observed, because really there is, the benefit to the public, is not outweighed by the benefit, I think, to the applicant, and substantial justice would be done for the same reasons. We have no evidence that it would diminish the value of surrounding properties, and again, just given the very, very low-key nature, I think it'd be highly unlikely. And we find that the applicant's claim for hardship does exist because, owing to the special conditions of the property that distinguish from other properties in the area, denial of the variance would result in a necessary hardship, because the proposed use, again, we think is a reasonable one, given its location and very low-key nature. And for there is no fair and substantial relationship between the purpose of the ordinance and the specific application to the property. And I think I'll note here, it is a somewhat unusual condition in that this is a use that would be allowed as a home occupation within the principal structure. It's simply because of the health code requirements that it has to be located in the exterior structure. So for those reasons, I support the granting of the variance, or I should say, move that the variance be granted. If I may, I would like to add some additional stipulations, if the board is comfortable with that, that all client parking be limited to the existing driveway, that there are no non-resident employees of the site, and that there would be no retail sales from this location.
If I can just interject with one statement or observation. The major home occupation ordinance does allow for one non-resident. So this, I just want the board to be aware that this would be a restriction that is more restrictive than what the current ordinance allows it. Just want to make that note.
And again, if the board's not comfortable with that, I certainly understand. I think the reason why I added that was because of the notion that allowing this in this accessory structure would be largely invisible, and that because of the concern around additional traffic on the small street and parking, it seemed that it would be reasonable to add that stipulation. But again, I'd throw that open to the board.
Is there a second? Mr. Patry, thank you. Is there discussion on the motion?
Are we going to discuss the restrictions?
You're open to discuss anything regarding the motion right now.
Yeah. It's interesting that Mr. Durfee reminded us that one employee would be possible, although the applicant has testified that she is going to be is not going to be hiring employees. I'm generally not comfortable with adding unnecessary restrictions. I don't see that, given the length of the driveway and the limited client traffic, that one additional non-resident employee, should that ever happen, be allowed. I don't think I would be comfortable restricting that.
I think if that's a consensus of the board, I'd be happy to amend the motion accordingly.
I'm actually okay with with your stipulations, in the sense that that has been the request from the applicant, and my concern is that, if I almost feel like we might end up allowing for the situation, and maybe I'm not following something correctly, and maybe Mr. Durfee can help me out if I'm not, but I could see the scenario, okay, we've approved this with this understanding that there's a single person working this business, but it could be that the owner decides that she doesn't want to do this anymore and essentially leases that space for somebody else to run the business from, and that's not what's been portrayed, that's not what the neighbors have been led to believe, that's not what this board
I
is.
don't think that would be allowed by what we're proposing here, would it?
No, it wouldn't, because then you don't have the resident who is operating the business.
Which is required for
You're now
the.
subletting,
Okay.
which is not contemplated in this section of the code.
I don't have a strong objection to the stipulation. I don't like throwing in what seemed like, to me, needless stipulations, but we might ask the applicant if she's comfortable with us putting that in, maybe make the neighbors feel better about it. Can we reopen the public hearing and ask the applicant if these stipulations are acceptable to her?
Maybe we could hear from other members of the board who haven't spoken on that point.
I'm okay with Mr. Mancara's stipulations. I think it's in line with what we've been asked to do. I mean, you know, we'd like to get an answer on the record, I think, but it seems like the applicant is fine with it, so I'm okay with it.
Mr. Boucher?
I'm also okay with Mr. Mancara's stipulation, and just by note, the applicant did nod in the affirmative in the audience, so I don't think we have to reopen. I think it's pretty clear, and I think she made that clear.
Okay, all right.
So can I?
And quite frankly, I think it's still the board's purview to do this with or without the applicant's kind of, acceptance of it.
So can I just clarify? I had the first, the second one was, which one was that? Second stipulation was?
That client parking is restricted to the existing driveway.
The first one was?
No retail sales.
No retail sales.
No retail sales, okay. All right, thank you.
No retail sales out of that property?
Out of that, yes, that's right.
Okay.
Is there any other discussion on them? Actually, did we have a second? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Yeah, Mr. Thank you. Yeah, I thought we were already in discussion, but just, any other discussion on the motion? If not, all in favor? And that passes unanimously. So the same 30-day window of appeal starts from tomorrow, but you're more than welcome to proceed as far as the variance part of things. I forgot, we still have a special exception motion to go through, so we're partway through. So I got ahead of myself in one sense. So, Mr. McCarr, do you want to continue on with that part of things?
I'd like to make a motion that the application of Blair and Brandon Wright, owners of 7.5 New Street, requesting, going on down, a special exception from Land Use Code Section 190-47B for a major home occupation for a bakery within the detached garage be approved. Going to the criteria for a major home occupation, we found based on the testimony in the application provided that there would not be more than one resident employed. In fact, we have a condition that there's no non-resident employed. We have granted a variance from number 2 that, I take that back. The applicant has indicated that no more than 30% of the gross floor area, or 300 square feet, will be available to the use, and we have seen that in the application. We've granted a variance from criterion number 3 that the use should be carried on strictly within the principal building. We found that the use will not change the internal or external residential character of the area, et cetera. We find essentially that it would be largely invisible to the neighborhood. There is no exterior storage or display proposed. No evidence that the proposed use would create any noise, dust, vibration, odor, smoke, glare, electrical interference, et cetera, beyond that which would be usually experienced in other residential dwellings. Only goods produced on the premises would be made to order for a specific customer. Again, that was clearly indicated in the application. There'll be no advertising on the premises other than a single non-illuminated sign, again, et cetera. And we've actually indication from the applicant that there would not be any online advertising either of the premises itself. It will be customers will come by appointment only. There is no indication that there will be any commercial vehicle stored on the site, although up to one is allowed. And the use will not create any vehicular traffic, which is substantially different than currently exists on the street. Once again, it's been testified and shown in the application that the number of clients coming would be few, and they'd be coming by appointment only. That's the special conditions. Now going to the special exception criteria itself, we find that the requested use is listed in the special exception matrix, and we find that the requested use will not create undue traffic congestion. Again, we've spoken to that. They will not overload any public water, drainage, sewer system, et cetera. Again, there's been no evidence of that. that special regulations for the use, as I've just indicated, will be fulfilled, and that requested use will not impair the integrity of the area or be out of character with the district or the immediate neighborhood. Once again, we've talked about that it would be largely invisible, consistent with the residential area.
Thank you. Is there a second to the motion? Mr. Lionel, thank you.
I'll get this one.
Is there any discussion on the motion? All in favor? And that passes unanimously. Now we're set with both parts of this, so same thing, as far as if you have any questions, you can contact Mr. Durfee and the planning department staff, but otherwise you are welcome to proceed with your project, and good luck. All right, that will take us on to case number 5.
Mr. Shaw, can we take 5 minutes?
Sure. We will take a 5-minute recess, and that'll put us back here at 8:40. We're going to start back up, so those of you that maybe want to just, take your conversation outside, that'd be great. Thank you. Can you give a knock just to make sure we know we're back on? Thank you. All right, we'll resume with case number 5, which is Raisin and Homes Elite LLC owner. The address is 20 Juliana Avenue, sheet 57, lot 3. The request is for an equitable waiver from RSA 674-33-A to allow the house foundation to encroach 1.6 feet into the front setback. This is in the RA zone, Ward 3. I noted that I would kind of mention about the criteria, but if you're going to speak directly to the criteria with your testimony, I will not use up extra time to do that.
Yes,
And I'll just
yes, sir.
let you-
I'll address them directly.
I'll let you present. I think it's pretty straightforward what has to be met. So welcome. Give us your name and address for the record and walk us through this.
All right, thank you, everyone. My name is Dan Borowski. I'm with Fieldstone Land Consultants out of Milford, New Hampshire. I'm here representing Raisin Homes Elite for the equitable waiver request for 20 Juliana Avenue. 20 Juliana Avenue was part of a subdivision that was approved in 2023. The lots are currently being developed right now. It's in the RA district, which requires a 25-foot front and rear setback and a 10-foot side setback. During the construction of this property, of the foundation, there's an error made in the staking of where the proposed foundation would go. And that skewed the building such that the most extreme encroachment is now 1.6 feet into the front setback. The total encroachment is 13 square feet, so it's 1.6 feet and it travels up about 13 feet along the front setback until the building becomes compliant again. So if there aren't any initial questions, I'll jump right into the criteria. So, facts supporting this request: the violation was not noticed or discovered by any owner, former owner, owner's agent, or representative, municipal official until after a structure in violation had been substantially completed, or until a lot or other division of land in violation had been subdivided and conveyed to a bona fide purchaser of value. So the encroachment violation was not noticed until our survey team at Fieldstone located the building for a certified plot plan. The source of the error was not determined until we compared the constructed foundation with the proposed building footprint. It was only after the foundation was poured that anyone involved realized that there was a 1.6-foot encroachment into the front setback. So by that time, the building was substantially complete. The foundation was poured, and I believe there was a little bit of framing on the foundation. The violation is not an outcome of ignorance of the law or ordinance. As stated above, this violation was the result of a mistaking a front corner for a rear corner on a 2-foot bump out section. It was not in bad faith or out of ignorance of the ordinance. The developer believed the front bump out corner was in fact the rear bump out corner and extended that portion of the foundation 2 feet further towards the right of way. The difference in building orientation was not noticed by anyone involved until after the foundation had been poured. A properly situated building would have fit on the site, so there's no reason for any party to act in bad faith. The developer gained nothing from this error. The physical dimensional violation does not constitute a public or private nuisance, nor diminish the values of property in the area, or interfere with or adversely affect any present or permissible future uses of any such property. A 1.6-foot encroachment into the front setback is not a public nuisance. There is still ample space between the building and the street, and this minor reduction of front setback will not adversely affect the neighborhood or endanger the health, safety, or well-being of the public. The house opposite the encroachment on lot 5733 is over 102 feet away. The character of the neighborhood remains unchanged despite the slight encroachment. This violation does not diminish the value of any property nor interfere with the present or future use. that due to the degree of past construction or investment made, ignorance of the facts constituting the violation, the cost of correction so far outweighs any public benefit to be gained that it would be inequitable to require the violation to be corrected. The cost of correction far outweighs the public benefit to be gained, as substantial reconstruction would be required to make the foundation compliant. Reconstruction efforts would require demolition and removal and repouring of a foundation 1.6 feet from its existing location. This would potentially cost tens of thousands of dollars to ameliorate a 13-square-foot encroachment. This would prolong the disturbance to the abutting properties into the area and be extremely costly to the developer. I think that addresses the four criteria. And so in summation, we're all human and mistakes do happen. As you mentioned, Mr. Chairman, equitable waivers are pretty rare. And this is certainly the first one that I've ever done in Nashua in my 10 years of doing this. So I appreciate if you take that into consideration, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, does the board have any questions? I think we probably found this to be pretty straightforward, and thank you for the presentation and the application. So let's see if there's any other testimony, and we'll go forward. Is there anybody present who would like to speak in favor of this equitable waiver application request for the 20 Juliana Avenue property? Is there anybody with questions, concerns, or opposition regarding this request for 20 Juliana Avenue? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing and open the public meeting. Anybody want to, Mr. Lionel?
This is very straightforward, very minimal issue, and I'm in support of the request.
I would also agree, and I'm supporting the application, the request.
I think we're all seem to be pretty much nodding in the affirmative, so would somebody like to make the motion regarding this? Mr. Patrick?
Sure. I move that we approve the request for equitable waiver from RSA Title 674, Section 33-A, to allow the house foundation to encroach 1.6 feet into the front setback. We find that the request involves a dimensional requirement. We find that the violation was not noticed or discovered by any owner, former owner, owner's agent, or representative, or municipal official until after restructuring violation had been substantially completed. We find that the error was not discovered until the foundation was poured. We find that the violation was not an outcome of ignorance of the law or ordinance, failure to inquire, obfuscation, misrepresentation, or bad faith on the part of any owner, owner's agent, or representative, but was instead caused by a good faith error, to wit, a good faith error made in the staking of the foundation. We find that the physical or dimensional violation does not constitute a public or private nuisance, nor diminish the value of it, nor diminish the value of other property in the area, nor interfere with or adversely affect any present or permissible uses in the future of any such property. We find this is a minor encroachment on the setback. And finally, we find that due to the degree of past construction or investment made at ignorance of the facts constituting the violation, the cost of correction so far as outweighs any public benefit to be gained that would be inequitable to require the violation to be corrected. To wit, this is a minor encroachment. It would not be equitable to require the owner to spend thousands of dollars to fix the error.
Thank you. Is there a second to the motion? Mr. Minkara, thank you. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor? And that passes unanimously. Thank you for your presentation, and it seems pretty unlikely there'd be any appeal, so won't worry. Take care. All right, that will take us to our final regular case of the night. And I'll just note as I read this in, I know that this property is in Ward 5, not Ward 9 as listed here. So just, if you hear me say that, that's intentional. The owners are Javier Lugo Diaz and Yarelis Mateo Rodriguez at 53 Musket Drive, Sheet C, Lot 1602, requesting a special exception from Land Use Code, Section 190-32, to construct an accessory in-law dwelling unit within the garage. This is in the R30 Zone, Ward 5. Welcome. Please state your name and address for the record and tell us what you're doing.
Good evening. My name is Javier Lugo. I'm owner and resident of 53 Musket Drive. And
Yarelis Mateo Rodriguez, owner of 53 Muscat Drive.
the reason that we are here in front of you today is to explain our intention to create the in-law for our father, for my father's-in-law. We are originally from a foreign country. We have been living here in Nashua since 2016, and recently our parents moved with us to live with us. They are older. They don't have anybody else in this country. We don't have anybody else here in this country, so they are coming to live with us. And our current residence has already on the back. The house is like a split ranch style. And on the back of the house when we bought, already have like an extension where the top floor is the master bedroom right now, and on the bottom it's connected to the garage, but it's basically useless. You cannot park any car or anything on that space. The intention that we have is try to convert it to the in-law to her parents. So it's not going to be any disturbance on the exterior of the house. It's basically only in the interior. Excuse me, I was trying to find the right word. It's not going to be any disturbance on the driveway or the front, the facade. I don't know if I say the right word. The front of the house, everything's going to be on the back, and basically our intention is to, I send all the information that I have. I also I've been in communication with Mark Collins. I emailed back and forth with him. He has some questions about the application. I already answered all his concerns. So I think that's our presentation. I'll be more than happy to answer any question that you might have.
Okay.
And sorry, I just want to add another thing. This change, it won't affect the use of the two garage, so it won't diminish the price, decrease the price of the property, or disturb the appearance of the neighborhood or anything like that. So.
I did want to ask, are you already familiar with the criteria regarding accessory dwelling units, the 9 criteria? Is that part of what you've already been through? I didn't see it in the application. Sometimes we have like a signed kind of thing.
No, I haven't.
We can just kind of talk through them, but I just want to make sure. I'm off the mic. So there are the 9 criteria that need to be satisfied. I might need to steal a peek here. Thank you. So we'll just kind of run down, and you can tell me if you believe that you're able to meet all these. So that the ADU shall be clearly incidental and subordinate in extent, use, and purpose to the primary structure and does not exceed 750 square feet.
Yeah, it's less.
Yeah.
It's like 244 square feet, I believe.
Yeah. That it's the only accessory dwelling unit within or on the same lot as a single-family dwelling.
Yes, yes.
The accessory dwelling unit shall not alter the single-family character or appearance of the single-family dwelling or its conformity with the character of the neighborhood. No new entrance or exit to an accessory dwelling unit shall be constructed on the front or frontage side of the single-family dwelling. No new curb cut from the street shall be constructed, and the exterior design of the accessory dwelling unit shall be compatible with the single-family dwelling through architectural use of building form, scale, construction material. It appears your only proposed exterior modification is the addition of the the access, covered
Exactly, yeah, the
access door and all?
the egress
Yeah.
door is the only change in the exterior appearance.
So I do think it does bring up possibly one point of inquiry for the board in that it looks like from your proposal that that doorway would face the street, but at the same time, that position is essentially sitting at the back of the original foundation.
Yeah.
So it's inset by the additional 25 feet or thereabouts probably. I don't know what the exact
Oh,
measurement.
more, from the street is?
No, from the front of your,
Oh.
front of your existing home, it's probably an additional 25 feet or so back,
Yes.
right? Whatever the length of the regular part of the garage is. So
Yeah.
I think that, I don't know if the board has any concerns about that we could talk about. You could, whether the doorway could be faced to the rear of the property or the side of the property.
Oh,
But
if you let me correct,
Yeah.
the way that we propose is on the side of the property, it won't be facing the front of the house.
Oh, so the doorway itself will actually face the side?
The side,
proper-
yes.
Okay.
The side of the
I thought it was
property.
I thought
Yeah,
the
no,
door
it
itself.
won't be facing the front, yes.
Then it definitely is not an issue.
Yes.
Okay, all right. So then you can meet this third criteria. The owners, being you, will be occupying either the primary or accessory dwelling unit. So you are planning on continuing to reside in the primary residence, right?
Mhm.
Okay.
The main use would be for my parents because as of today, they're living on my, I'm sorry. So, yes, so there will not be any change on people living there.
Yep.
We are the primary owners, and we are gonna remain there. We have a 3-year-old. We have my parents right now, they are staying in my basement, so we want for them to have something like independent, but at the same time be close to me, because I take care, my mom has some treatments and some medical issues, so I am the one taking care of her. So I want for her to be kind of independent, but close to me at the same time.
Okay.
Yeah, we are the only support that they
Yeah,
have, so.
yeah. Okay, thank you. This next one, I won't read the whole thing. It's basically about, you need to update and file with the Hillsborough County Registry of Deeds, essentially this text that basically notes that you are having this additional
Yeah.
part. So that's just something you need to follow through on. Only one additional off-street parking space is required above the minimum standard for a single-family house. I don't think you don't have any issue regarding the amount of
No,
parking
our
available.
driveways,
Yeah.
as long as can carry like a 6 small car, like 3 and 3, so.
An interior door shall be provided between the primary dwelling unit and the accessory dwelling unit. I think I saw that on the
Yes.
plan, right?
Yeah, yes, there is one interior door also.
And the single-family dwelling and the accessory dwelling unit shall not be separated in ownership, for example, by condo. There's no indication that you have
No,
any.
no, no.
And then they can only be associated with single-family detached dwellings, which this home is, so you pretty much automatically meet criteria 9. So we just wanted to make sure you're aware of those and you're
Yes.
committed to those, so, yeah, I'll take that back. Is there any other questions or comments from the board? Okay, I think you're all set. We obviously have nobody else in the audience, so there's not going to be any public testimony. We did get one letter in support from your neighbors, Richard and Donna Tangway, at 25 Whitford Road, basically just saying they have no objection to the construction of said renovation. I think that takes care of correspondence. So that will close out the public hearing, and we'll open the public meeting. Mr. Boucher?
Pretty straightforward. They meet all the requirements. No physical changes. I know they're going to add a side entrance, but again, minor. So I'm going to support the application.
I see Mr. McCarty nodding his head, and Mr. Patry likewise,
Yes.
and Mr. Lionel noting, and I think this is a very straightforward application, and I'm in support also. Would somebody like to make a motion? Mr. Lionel, thank you.
Make a motion to approve the special exception requested by Javier Lugo Diaz and Yarelis Mateo Rodriguez, 53 Musket Drive, requesting special exception from Land Use Code Section 190-32 to construct an accessory dwelling unit within the garage. This is in the R30 Zone, Ward 9. 5, excuse me, Ward 5, yep, that's what you said. This requested use is listed as a special exception in the use matrix. The requested use will not create undue traffic congestion or unduly impair pedestrian safety. There's not likely to be any additional traffic or pedestrian overload for one additional couple living in this house. The requested use will not overload any public water, drainage, or sewer system or other municipal system. To the extent that the requested use or any developed use in the immediate area or any other area of the city will be unduly subjected to hazards affecting health, safety, or the general welfare. This will have no effect whatsoever. The house already can accommodate the anticipated additional use of public utilities and should not be a problem. We have testimony that all of the special regulations set forth in this article are fulfilled, and the board believes that the requested use will not impair the integrity or be out of character with the district or immediate neighborhood, nor be detrimental to the health, morals, or welfare of the residents of the city. The construction of the accessory dwelling unit will be largely internal to the house. There will be no front-facing entrance, and any additional disturbance will be minimal. So again, I make a motion to approve the special exception.
Thank you. Seconded by Mr. Petrie. Thank you. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor? That passes unanimously. So your application is approved. There is a 30-day window of appeal. It seems unlikely that anything would come of that. You can certainly contact Mr. Durfee and the staff if you have any questions. And it looks like maybe he's got something for you anyhow. All right. Give him a moment there. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you.
So we do have two rehearing requests before us tonight. And one is for 36 Granite Street, and we will start with that one. Mr. Durfee, do you want to go ahead and just kind of intro this to us based on the conversation we had?
Certainly. Yes. So, as I'm sure you are all aware of the history surrounding this particular rehearing request for 36 Granite Street. This went to the HAB, the Housing Appeals Board. It was remanded back to the ZBA for basically beefing up the findings. So then in November, this board reheard the case. And I will clarify for the record that we did do a full rehearing process as directed by our legal counsel. I just want to be clear because that was refuted in the rehearing request. And so in preparation for this meeting tonight, I checked back in with legal. There are some concerns about the substance of the motions and whether or not they really do live up to what the HAB's direction was. So in the exploration of that, we were discussing potential avenues of fixing this, and how do we, because essentially if we were to deny the rehearing request this evening, we lose control of the application. But if we grant the rehearing, we go back through, we do it all over again. We've essentially heard this case twice. I think there's little to be gained in terms of new information. So what is the process to do the HAB's order justice and really make sure that this board delivers very concrete findings without having to go through the rehearing process? And so there is a statutory mechanism. So this is found in RSA 677-3, and this deals with appeals of the zoning board, and in particular in the rehearing procedures, in which a board can decide to suspend a decision for the purpose of further consideration. So essentially what that means is effectively tabling the application in a way. Basically, we are suspending decision so that we can then further consider evidence that was presented previously. So effectively, we would continue to a date certain. I would suggest the first meeting in February. And then we wouldn't take any new testimony from the applicant or any abutters or the public at large. And then we would basically kind of reconsider the evidence and reestablish findings. And I would be happy to provide a memo with some more detailed findings and based on what was presented, but also as it relates to the HAB's specific orders. And then I could provide some summary on, some of the backgrounds of what are the criteria for each and, the court cases that go along that to provide the precedent. So that is the summary of the legal, the conversation I had with legal. I did touch base with Rob before the meeting just to let him know, and I let Steve know as well. So that is the background for you.
Go ahead, Mr. McConnell.
So Sam, I've not experienced that process before. Would the intent be that the scope of our deliberations are limited to refining the, okay, so we would not be re-deliberating, we could not reach a different outcome, it would simply be refining those findings.
That is not true. You have the ability to set your own scope, essentially. That is the process that's laid out in this statute, where you define what you want to do. It may very well be the case that in your reconsideration of the evidence, you come to a different decision. That's entirely possible. I would not recommend that you limit yourself to strictly refining. That may very be the result, and that's totally fine. But basically, more that you just want to reconsider, and the result may be a finer point on the same decision, but it's the reconsideration that's important.
Mr. Patrick?
So would this be us basically having another public meeting?
No.
Okay.
And that's what's very clear about this. This is the suspension of the decision is more, we need to press pause. We know there's a lot of information. We would just like to reconsider it and revisit and re-articulate our findings. This is very specifically not a rehearing. Obviously, the request was for a rehearing. Now, you could very much grant that, but in doing so, you have to find, were there flaws? And this avenue, by suspending the decision, it doesn't go into, were there flaws in the decision? No, we may have rushed to a decision we may need to consider further. And this is the avenue by which, there's a Latin term, suspension, something like that. I'm not a lawyer, but basically, this is your own proactive action.
Sua sponte?
Sua sponte, yeah.
Thank you very much. That's very much it. You are taking this action on your own accord, rather than being requested to do so. Obviously, you had the rehearing request, but this is a separate action.
I mean, just from my perspective, that seems like a reasonable approach. What gave me pause were the repeated allegations in here that we somehow acted outside the scope of the HAB's decision. And having the at least from my perspective, having the opportunity both to revisit that decision and any guidance that may be provided by legal around what the scope of that in fact is and what the parameters of that is, I think, at least for me, would be helpful.
So if we do that suspension, that is actually specific to, at the moment, the rehearing request. And then on that date certain, we will essentially come back and revisit both our, the decision we made prior and refine that if we desire, and also act upon the rehearing request itself?
Correct.
Okay. I think that seems like the right way to proceed, but does anybody have any concerns about this otherwise?
Are we going to spend time at the regular meeting doing this refining or whatever the consideration we're giving? How does this work?
Yes, so you would essentially be in your public meeting section of an application consideration. So you basically bypass the public hearing because you're relying on the evidence that was presented in November. You are in your public meeting, you are doing your deliberation. We're going into a little bit further detail. Obviously, we have received written testimony as part of the petition for rehearing. That's going to be part of the grounds for what is being considered as well as what was presented in November.
Okay, so one possible outcome is that we reissue our findings and decision at that meeting, and then we then proceed to process the rehearing request.
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Patrick?
Did I hear you right, Sam, that you'll send us or come up with some proposed findings and perhaps some, maybe even a proposed, suggested decision or something of that nature?
Yes, and I'll say, reading through Attorney Swiniarski's rationale for requesting the rehearing, I thought that he made some good points. I was like, oh, maybe I should go back through, the HAB's order and kind of pick out some things. And I do think that there are some opportunities for this board to make more articulate findings, really that do reflect exactly what was in the HAB's order. And I think that we owe it to the process and also to the clarity for the HAB. Say the decision stands, the findings are more finely articulated, the rehearing is denied, an appeal is subsequently filed, we go back to the HAB, well, at least the HAB will be able to say, well, look, you took our direction seriously, you've changed your findings substantially. It's unlikely that we would see another remand, and I think that that's what we're really trying to avoid. We want to put the issue to bed definitively one way or the other, and in doing so, we need to have very clear findings as we've been directed to have.
And that sounds good to me. I was, because while some of this really did give me pause, I wasn't at that hearing. So I also felt uncomfortable voting on a rehearing request when I wasn't there.
So I think we need some kind of motion then to handle this. So is it as simple as, so that first meeting in February, I think is February 11th, is that correct?
I believe that is correct. Yes.
Okay. So basically, is the motion can be as simple as regarding the rehearing request for 36 Granite Street, that we will pursue a suspension of our deliberation?
Decision. Suspension of decision. I'd say pursuant to RSA 677:3.
Okay. So to use that language, did you capture that, Mr. Boucher?
Yeah, pursuant to 677:3.
Yeah. Okay. That we will revisit this case on February 11th, 2025.
Okay, so pursuant to 677:3, we will revisit this case on February
11th.
11th.
Does that seem sufficient?
Yes, thank you.
So I've made that motion, seconded by Mr. Minkara. Any discussion on that motion? Okay, seeing none, all in favor? Mr. Boucher, yes, that's 5-0, that passes, and we will come back to this on the 5th, the 11th. And then we have an additional rehearing request for, let's see if I can get the right, this is for, what is the actual address? It's the 450, no.
2 Oldfield?
Thank you, 2 Oldfield.
2L,
Yeah, oh, yeah, you have it listed in the agenda, which is much easier to follow. So it's 2 Oldfield, 2 and L Oldfield Road. So this was submitted by Cliff and Linda Banner and Don and Denise Jetty at 459 South Main Street and 459 and a half South Main Street respectively. So, I think as we've done in the past, we have the 4 essentially questions for us. We've typically went through each of those and gotten the opinion of all the voting members for this, and then kind of proceed through those 4. So is there any reason not to just do kind of the way we've been doing that? Okay. So the first question is, was there any procedural error? This includes improper notice, denying someone the right to be heard, et cetera. Mr.
No,
Lionel?
no, there was not.
Okay, Mr. Boucher?
No.
Mr. Minkara?
Again, I wasn't here for this, but based on what I'm seeing in the request for the rehearing on the record, no.
Okay, and Mr. Petrie?
No.
And Mr. Shaw, also no on that. Secondly, was it an illegal decision? In other words, did the board fail to completely address each of the points of law required for the special exception and/or variance? Mr. Boucher?
No.
Okay, Mr. Minkara?
No.
Mr. Petrie?
No.
Mr. Lionel?
No.
And Mr. Shaw is a no also. The third item, does the request for rehearing contain any new information not presented or available to the board at the original public hearing? Mr. Minkara?
So here's where I have a question. Again, not being there, what this rehearing request seems to turn on is that it appears that the petitioners brought some video or photo evidence on a flash drive, if I'm understanding it correctly.
Something like that,
And we were not
yeah.
able technically to see that. So I guess that's my question, is whether or not, and I'm opening as a question to those who were there, presumably that did in fact happen, and is there a sense that what was on that flash drive was material?
Well, the other thing is the communication from Mr. Banner was that that was going to be provided in person to the planning office back in early December. And from my understanding is the city has not received anything of that kind. So
Okay,
as
so
of
we have
now,
not
we have
received
not
that
received
evidence.
anything
Okay.
despite the indications in the communication.
I will just state for further clarification, we have not received a CD or, hard way of conveying digital material. We were sent an email to a Google Drive link, but we were not able, you have to log in, and there's various procedures that we weren't able to get through. And so to clarify, we have been in receipt of that email, but that in itself was not able to allow us to access this information and bring it before you.
And did your department contact Mr. Banner and inform him?
We
of that?
did, and we do have an email record of, you said you'd have it in, I think, December 5th. We followed up later on. There was, I believe, no response, and I think we did follow up again in early January
Okay.
as well.
So continuing, so Mr. Minkara, do you believe then that there's, to answer the third question, any new information not presented or available?
No, there's simply the allegation that it exists.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Patry?
No.
Mr. Lionel?
No.
Mr. Boucher?
No.
And Mr. Shaw, no either. And is there anything which would/could cause the board to make a different decision? Mr. Patry?
No.
Mr. Lionel?
No.
Mr. Boucher?
No.
Mr. Minkara?
No.
And Mr. Shaw is a no. So going through the 4 questions, all 5 of us have responded in the negative for all of those. So there's nothing from any of that that appears to indicate that there would be any reason to grant the rehearing request. So I believe a motion to deny the rehearing request is in order, if somebody wants to make that.
I'll do it.
Mr. Lionel, thank you.
Let's see how we do this. Okay. Want to make a motion to deny the rehearing request for 2 and L Oldfield Road. The board agrees unanimously that there was no procedural error. The board agrees unanimously that it was not an illegal decision. The board agrees unanimously that there was no new information available that was not presented or available at the time of the original hearing, and we have not received any additional information, although there was an allegation that such information existed, but the city did try to obtain that information from the applicant and was unsuccessful. The board also believes that there is not anything which would cause the board to make a different decision. So I make a motion to deny the rehearing request.
And is there a second? Mr. Patry, go ahead. And second by Mr. Patry. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor of the denial? That's 5-0. So the motion for rehearing request is not passed. That takes care of that part of the regular cases. We do have the agenda for 2 weeks from now for the January 28th meeting. January 20th. It'll be January 28th. Yeah. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 cases. The main question before us now is there any concern regarding regional impact that anybody observes from this?
No.
I see none. Mr. Boucher, do you see any regional impact? Mr. Minkara?
No.
Mr. Patry?
No.
Okay, so the board does not find any regional impact concerns. We had minutes, right? Assume?
Yes, we do. Minutes from December 10th.
December 10th meeting, yes. Does anybody have any feedback, questions, concerns about the minutes? Nope.
No, I do apologize. I had one point I was going to make earlier for the record, but I forgot.
Okay.
If I may.
Yes.
So referencing our wetland special exception, the comment was made that Deb Chisholm was chair of the Conservation Commission, and she's not. She's a city sustainability manager. So
Yeah, I was
just
thinking
thought I'd
that.
mention that. Yeah, I forgot to mention it earlier.
No problem. Can somebody make a motion for us to approve the minutes from December 10th? Mr. Minkara, thank you. Seconded by Mr. Lionel. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor? Not that I want us to actually act on this, but we are at that time in the cycle of our board where we need to look at establishing who might want to be chair, vice chair, and clerk for 2025. So I think, hopefully, just basically, especially since Mr. Neely is not here with us tonight, we always try to have all the full-time members that are from the board available for any of those kind of votes, if at all possible. I think we've managed to do that most years, but maybe not every time. I would suggest we defer until maybe the next meeting, but if, actually, Mr. Patry, unfortunately, you can't take one of those slots, but Mr. Minkara, certainly note we might be interested in whether you would, and you don't have to say anything tonight, but just maybe you want to be considered for one of those positions, and we'll probably also extend the same interest to Mr. Neely, and so just put that out there for the board to think about for hopefully our next meeting. Any other business for tonight? If not, motion to adjourn at 9:24. We are adjourned, a little bit longer than some of the recent ones.
You never know, right?
Yeah.
Well, as it gets into